This session was actually a great segue into our next session, which is going to talk about the ethics of decisions in artificial intelligence. And for that, I'm going to call Ashish on stage to introduce the speaker. Ashish is the conference chair of today's conference. He has had the major back-end role in putting together the content for today. He serves on the board of the IIT Alumni Association in the Bay Area. His dedication to the alumni community is reflected in his leadership of more than a decade of volunteer service for the community. Currently, Ashish is the Vice President of Time Series AI Business at Falconry, a Silicon Valley-based venture-funded AI startup. Throughout his career, he has led business growth in multiple startups and established companies. Beyond his professional achievements, Ashish actively gives back to the startup ecosystem. He is a graduate of IIT Kharagpur. And Ashish has a dream. He told me that he's seen IITians be the 4th highest builders of unicorn startups in the world. His dream is to see IITians be #1. So more power to the dream, Ashish. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody told, actually it was Muhammad Ali, that if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. So that's why I chose that dream. I serve the alumni community of my alma mater, which is IIT, and I will encourage, and there are, in the audience, there are a lot of you who also serves your own alumni community. This is very important that you build a strong alumni community, help them, because these associations are the bridge from your past to your present to the future. Helps you to foster a relationship and also celebrates your achievements all together with your fellow alumni. So with that, with the help of all the board members and the volunteers, I have put together this program, and there is a theme to it, and that theme is tied very much to the dream I have. So we have, again, as I said, we are 4th. IIT is the 4th ranks 4th in the unicorn building after Stanford, Harvard, and Wharton. And just like there was a famous advertisement in 50s. A lot of us have read about it in our business school. The Avis said, "We are #2, so we try harder." And that's what we are going to do, and that's my contribution to my community. And the way we have structured is that we like to help you to become more unicorn builder. The first thing that you need is obviously ideas. And that's where, as Nidhi in her speech said, the theme is the decode the future. So we have, how do you decode the future? We have invited some of the greatest minds. You have seen the speakers like Ali, and you will see speakers in many different areas, like the agentic AI and the AI in healthcare, the quantum security, and so on and so forth. So you got the ideas, and then you need the money. So we have brought a lot of VCs here. You can learn from them where they're investing. There is a specific session, actually, that a VC will tell you how they're thinking about their investment. We have brought Lightspeed Ventures and Zeta Ventures and many ventures. And I have taken the initiative to invite one of the VCs, Sapphire Ventures, and the speaker happens to be the CEO, partner, and the founder, and he has helped to build 8 unicorns and 14 IPOs. I'll be fortunate to introduce the CEO of Sapphire Ventures. Now, after the VCs, you obviously need, after the money, you need the engineers. And that's why we have the campus mixers. You get to know them, you network with them, with all the people, and so on. And we also know that you have to think of your market segmentation, who are my ICPs, how do I market, et cetera. So we have a great session you'll see on the market positioning by a very talented marketeer from the Silicon Valley. And lastly, you also, you are all founders. You're going to be founders of these unicorns. And the most important thing about founders is they have to be salespeople, salesmen. I was, as Swapnil mentioned, I volunteer for startups, and one of the areas I work with is the NSF iCourse program. And there, in a 7-week program, you have to reach 100 potential customers. And how do you do that? And that's where I'll say that your alumni association will be very helpful. So I will request you to build a strong alumni, because I have noticed in reaching out to people that and I say that I am a alumni from Harvard or an alumni from Wharton, it's much easier to get that meeting, get that introduction, to get the ideas and so on and so forth. So that's the power of the strong alumni, and I'm requesting you to help us all, help the whole alumni to build a very strong alumni association where we can help each other. And that's where my dream is to therefore help to build this #1 unicorn builder among the IIT community. So thank you for coming here. And my next task is to introduce an excellent panel. You heard from Firoz that AI has, of course, we are all technologists. We are all excited about AI. But we have to be careful about the ethics and biases and the guardrails we need to put. And I could not find a better speaker than Brian Green. He teaches, actually, ethics, AI ethics, at our local university, Santa Clara University. He is Director of Technology Ethics at the Markula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara. And he has written a book on it, actually. And I'll now invite Brian Green. Please come to the stage and help us to learn about ethical decision-making in the day of data and AI. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sounds like the microphone's working. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. It's a very great honor, and the previous speakers have just been fantastic. And I've really enjoyed listening to each of them say the importance of the heart, the importance of responsible AI, the importance of all of these sorts of things that are coming around in the industry, in the tech industry, that are really important. I'm going to talk a little bit about ethics from the very, very biggest picture. So ethics has to do with questions of should. Should. We have the word should in the English language, and it's just it's a kind of an interesting word. It has a whole bunch of things associated with it having to do with the future, as in you should find a gas station in the next town if you're driving down the road. That's a predictive idea of how should works. But there's also a behavioral aspect of should, the ethical, the moral aspect of should. Ethics only becomes a question when one has the freedom to choose. So, with all of this power that we're getting from technology, we can look back at the Industrial Revolution, we can look at the invention of nuclear weapons, we can look at the environmental crisis, we can look at technology and AI, and we can see that human action has changed. Our power has increased over time. When our power increases, we have more freedom. And then we have to ask ourselves, what should we do with that power? We used to exercise a very different level of power than we do now. And so our ethical systems are also accustomed to having a lower level of power. When we look at the past, and we look at the future, and we look at the present, we can see a trajectory of increasing power, and therefore the importance of ethics increasing over time. We have more freedom of choice because technology gives us three big changes. the scope of action changes, the efficiency of action changes, and the determination of the outcome changes. In other words, technology, everyone knows technology makes things more efficient. But it's not just the efficiency that increases. We can have only 2% of the population in the United States working on farms anymore, whereas in other countries, most of the population works developing food or growing food. With that efficiency of action, you free up an enormous amount of your population to do something new scope of action. So you can think of, for example, the pictures behind me are the building of the Panama Canal and Elon Musk just catching the rocket just a few days ago. So the scope of human action has changed dramatically. It used to be that humans could not catch rockets. It used to be that humans didn't even have rockets. And yet now we do. And the determination of the outcome has also changed. People tried to build the Panama Canal before they had adequate technology to build it. And when they tried, they failed. The determination of outcome was not there. When you develop the technology significantly, then you can actually achieve what you're trying to achieve. All right. In the past, humans were involuntarily constrained by our weakness. We did not have the power, and therefore we did not have the choices. We were involuntarily constrained. Humans must now learn to be voluntarily constrained by our own judgment, our ethics. This is why ethics has become important, because with this growth of power and this growth of choice, now we have to actually figure out how to use that power correctly. It's under our voluntary control now. What used to be involuntary choices made for us by our lack of power. And so the question that comes up is, should we or should we not? So just as a general rule, we should learn to be good, or we should learn to be efficient at good actions, and we should learn to be inefficient at bad actions. We have technology. Technology can create these forms of efficiency. And so we can ask ourselves, how can we use technology to make good more efficient? How can we use technology to make bad or evil more difficult? How do we make sure that we are using the technology to make good actions easier and make bad actions harder? If we instead do the opposite, we will live in a terrible world. All right, there are lots and lots of concerns going on in technology and AI ethics right now. I'm not going to go through all of these in great detail, but just to name a few. AI safety and control, that's a huge issue. Does it actually work? Does the self-driving car get you where you're going, or does it crash you on the way there? Machine learning fairness, bias, justice, all those sorts of issues. Privacy, surveillance, AI explainability and transparency, lethal and weaponized AI. We're seeing a lot more of this as we're going forward. Social credit scoring has become, of course, it's a big thing in some parts of the world. There's a risk of it becoming much more broadly applied. Misinformation, disinformation, tech solutionism. What do I mean by solutionism? It's thinking that every problem has a technological solution. And I think that our previous speaker was talking about this, that yes, technology will solve a lot of problems, but there are some that are really internal to the human heart, where we really need to be remembering that we are the center of this technology and we're the ones making the choices about it. Tech monoculture and diversity, AI hype and pseudoscience, de-skilling due to AI. So of course, AI is going to change jobs. It will make us de-skilled at old jobs. A lot of the times that's okay. But there are certain sorts of things, if AI is making ethical or moral decisions, for example, we need to make sure that we do not morally de-skill ourselves by saying, oh, the machine will take care of all this decision making. We don't need to pay attention to whether it's actually doing a good thing for the world or not. So we need to make sure we're not morally de-skilling ourselves. Of course, technology has a big carbon footprint. AI-driven unemployment, wealth and power inequality, the manipulative quality of technology, the effects of technology on education and mental health, the attention economy, and a declining sense of meaning. This is another one that we just really need to pay attention to. The time that we spend looking at screens as opposed to talking to each other starts pulling the meaning out of reality. It drains meaning out of reality because as our relationships are weakened, those relationships are such a strong source of meaning. And of course, there are other forms of meaning in life also, but the relational sense of it's very important. All right, so now I'm going to go to the practical side of things. That's kind of the theoretical background. I've worked with the World Economic Forum for the past 6 years or so, I guess maybe more than that, maybe 7 or 8 years. And I wrote 3 reports with them with Microsoft, IBM, and Salesforce. And these reports were specifically on what these 3 companies, each of them, were doing with respect to AI in their organizations and ethics specifically. What was the ethical side of this? How were they implementing ethics in their organizations? So I highly recommend these resources if you want a practical look at what 3 technology companies were doing. Of course, these are now a couple years old, so things have changed. The field is, of course, moving incredibly quickly. But some of the things that we learned from that have gone into some of these other resources. So the Markkula Center, as Ashish noted earlier, is local. We're just over in Santa Clara University. And one of the things that we've done, the Markkula Center was founded in 1986. Its kind of most prominent product, if you want to think of it that way, is this framework for ethical decision making. I'm going to go through it very quickly. I have 4 things that I want to talk about, and I'm just going to go through them quickly because I want you to know they exist. They're free. They're resources that you can use anytime you feel like you have an ethical situation where you want to ask yourself, how do I think about this in order to make the right decision in this case? Everybody wants to make the right decision. I mean, ultimately, people don't generally think that they're doing the wrong thing. People want to make the right choice. What we try to do at the Markkula Center is just give people the thing that they need in order to make their own good decisions. So with the framework, number 1 thing, recognize the ethical issue. Are you in an ethical situation? And once you start paying attention, you'll notice that they show up perhaps more than you thought they were. Number 2, get the facts. You need to know what the evidence is, how it's going to affect people. When you have a courtroom drama, for example, the first thing they do is lay out all the evidence. And of course, in real courts as well. You need to evaluate the alternative actions. So first of all, think about what your options are. A lot of times people tend to reduce ethics to just 2 options. There are very often more than 2 options. There's probably an infinite number of options. The question is, what are the reasonable ones to choose from? And then think about them from different perspectives, and I'll talk about those different perspectives on the next slide. Next one, test out the decision in your mind mentally. Think to yourself, I think this is the right decision. And then ask yourself, what would my mom think if she knew I was going to make this choice? What would my teacher, my most highly respected teacher, think if they heard that I was going to make this choice? What would a judge in a courtroom think? What would the internet think on social media or the older styles of media or television talk show? What would they think of this? And that kind of gives you an idea of feedback or reflection. And the last one is you need to actually do the action, implement it as carefully as possible in the right way, and then think to yourself, what have I learned from this? And do I need to learn from this more in the future? How can I adjust future actions to do this even better? All right, here this is in kind of a diagram. I'm just going to concentrate on the center one, evaluate through ethical lenses. So we have 6 different lenses that we think about. We have the rights lens, the justice lens, the utilitarian lens, the common good, virtue ethics, and care ethics. So those 6 different perspectives are meant to be something that are widely accessible. Culturally speaking, of course, some of these come from particular places in the world, but something like care ethics is universal. Every human culture has a notion of what care is. Same thing with virtue ethics. Every culture in the world has an idea of what a good person looks like. Same thing with the common good. Same thing with justice. Every place in the world has an idea of what justice looks like or what the common good looks like. And so when you're making these ethical decisions, think about those different perspectives on these things. What you'll often discover is that the tech industry, for example, is very focused on cost-benefit analysis, which falls right into utilitarianism. But a lot of people look at technology and they think of it in terms of human rights, or they think of it in terms of justice. And so if you're using just one particular lens, but many people out there in society are using a different lens, you'll have a communication problem. And it could lead to bad decision-making, ultimately, if you're not using the full spectrum of options and possibilities for thinking about these issues. All right. The second tool that I want to talk about today is ethics and technology practice. So ethics and technology practice was something that we developed at the Markkula Center with funding from the Omidyar Network and also working with Google's X Moonshot division. So we built and developed these tools in conjunction with those organizations. They're all for free on the Markula Center website. Here's just an idea of what they look like. And there's an ethics toolkit in there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ethics toolkit in particular, because this ethics toolkit is designed for engineers who are designing a product and thinking to themselves, what is the right way to think about this product? All right, so the ethical toolkit has 7 or 8 tools in it, depending on how you count them. First of all, expand the ethical circle. Think bigger. Who do we need to include here in this decision that we might not be thinking about? Many companies, of course, are thinking about, we want to please our customers, we want to make money, but also think about how this is going to affect people who are using the product out there in society. How does it change society? Those kinds of questions. Ethical pre-mortems and post-mortems. So post-mortem is down there on the bottom, and a pre-mortem is up there on the top of this slide, or in the top row of this slide. A post-mortem means something bad happened, and you look back and you try to figure out why that bad thing happened. A pre-mortem happens before this thing happens. You think to yourself, how could this go wrong? How could we make a mistake in this situation? How do we prevent that bad thing from happening? All right, case-based analysis is looking for analogies out there. You say, what's a similar case? What's a similar product? How have similar products affected society in the past? Social media is a classic example of this. It's been all over the place. Everybody knows now if you have a social media company, you're going to have trouble with disinformation and content moderation and all of these other sorts of things. And if you start up a new social media company or take over another social media company and start changing things, you don't get the excuse that you didn't know, right? Those cases already exist. Ethical risk sweeping is the next one on there. Basically, you're looking for all the ethical risks that you could encounter in the situation that you're in and thinking about how to address those risks, similar to the pre-mortem situation. Down on the bottom there, remembering the ethical benefits. One risk of doing ethics is that you say, oh, I can't do anything. Every choice has a bad outcome, so I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. Remembering the ethical benefits keeps your eye on the prize. What is the good that you're trying to accomplish with the product that you're creating? What is the good that you are trying to provide to people? Think about the terrible people think about how your product can be abused. People will take your product, perhaps use it for bad things. Are there ways that you can disincentivize those changes? Are there ways that you can make sure that those perhaps options or attractions for terrible people do not come to be exploited and used against you and society? Last one, closing the loop. After you've done all this analysis, then go back and say, how do we go back to the beginning and iterate on that to make even better product choices the next time? All right, and here they are just listed out in linear form. These can be built into your product design and workflow processes. This is something that's just from the Markula Center website. It's way too small to read right now. I'm not going to try to go through it. But what I will say is that you can go to the Markula Center website and read this there and just think to yourself, okay, we use this tool at this stage. We use a different tool at this stage. And at each one of these different stages, there are different tools that can be used. Sometimes you use multiple tools per stage. Sometimes you repeat the use of the tools later on. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is a book that we published called Ethics in the Age of Disruptive Technologies. Once again, free book. The PDF is available at the Markula Center website. All you have to do is put in your email address and name. And the reason for that is because the book is going to be updated in the future as as things change. We will update the book, so we just want to be able to contact you if that happens. It has two really big things in it. First of all, it has guiding principles. Lots of people have guiding principles out there. Every company has their own principles, whether it's Google or Facebook or Salesforce or Microsoft, whoever. Everybody has these principles. The thing that this book does is it tries to implement them. And we suggest some principles. If your company doesn't have principles yet, here are some ideas to think about. Respect human dignity and rights, promote human well-being, invest in humanity, promote justice, access, diversity, equity, inclusion, recognize that Earth is for all life, maintain accountability, and the last one, promote transparency and explainability. The other big thing in the iTech handbook is the implementation. And I should just say, we shortened the title of the book to the iTech Handbook just to make it easier. iTech stands for the Institute for Technology, Ethics, and Culture, which is a part of the Markula Center. So we have a roadmap then for implementing these principles. The first thing is that you have to decide to actually go on this road trip. This is the analogy that we use. We think about it as a road trip. First, you have to decide. The leadership has to be on board. Next, you have to do a current culture assessment. That means you determine where you are as an organization. You figure out your location on the map if you want to think it that way. Next, think about your destination, your responsible technology governance framework. What are you aiming for to have as the transformation that occurs in your organization? Stage 4 is you need to think about how to get from where you are to your destination. Stage 2 is figuring out where you are. Stage 3 is figuring out where your destination is. Stage 4 is getting from here to there. It's the implementation. How do you build that into the organization? And that is what the handbook is all about. It's pages and pages of figuring out how to do the implementation. Here's your checklist. Here's the boxes that you have to read. All those sorts of things. And it explains it in very, very great detail. And the last one is continuous improvement. Make sure that you are on progress towards the destination that you're going to. All right. So just a summary, and then hopefully we'll have time for a question or two. Technology gives you more power, it gives you more choices, and that gives you more need for ethics. This is why ethics is becoming more important all the time. It used to be, decades ago, people didn't talk about ethics in technology. It was a very, very small field. Now it's a very, very big field and very, very practical. How can AI and technology make good easier and make bad or evil things more difficult? That, I think, is a big picture perspective that we want to take on these issues. So the resources I talked about were the 3 case studies from Microsoft, IBM, and Salesforce, Markla Center for Ethical Decision Making, the Ethics and Technology Practice Toolkit, and the iTech Handbook with its principles and roadmap. The world's changing. Our choices have become very, very powerful and significant. Ethics can help us make these good choices, and we also have these tools. The tools are out there. It's not just the Markla Center. There are lots of tools. People are talking about them in other places in Europe, in Asia, all around the world. This is a global problem. We all have to come together and solve these issues together. And my email is up there. My LinkedIn is up there. I'm very happy to connect with all of you, and thank you very much.